Put that coffee down.
I'm not here to waste your time, okay? I certainly hope you're not here to waste mine. So I'm gonna keep this short.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Coffee's for closers only.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Behind Your Back podcast with me, Bradley Hartman, founder and president of the Behind Your Back Sales Company. In this podcast, we talk about leadership, personal productivity, time management, and the craft of selling in the construction industry. Today, this episode is brought to you by Boise Cascade, engineered wood products. They help you move faster, build stronger. They make it easier to get more done. All right, there we go. We're going to jump right in here today because this is live, dude. We are living post-pandemic. Carl, are we not? You flew in from Portland. Carl Moyer, Director of Human Resources at the Parr Company. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
We also have the latest, by far the greatest, member of our own team, Mr. Erik Rossi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. You know, I've seen this room on Zoom calls many of times, and I've seen it in videos. I'm now here, and this is a very special day for me.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a big time for you. You have been instrumental in upping our social media game. You've been a producer. By the way, I've noticed that on other shows, they recognize producers. And I was like, we should maybe give Erik a nod. And then I was like, no, we shouldn't.
I haven't been here that long yet.
Yeah, well, exactly. That was my point.
You don't know if you're going to keep me yet.
This is true.
I'm not long-term right now.
Carl, this is what we're talking about here today. We're talking about management. We're talking about leadership. You are in town to help us move forward faster, knock on wood. You're not done yet, but we've moved quickly in our efforts to write our book, Yes, Fear Works, but There's a Better Way, which is all about becoming a manager and a leader that people love working for. And I have many examples in my past history where I have utterly failed to do that.
Yes, we all should have lots of examples of times that we have failed. We could have done better. A lot of times we gloss those over. We don't think about where we have failed. We are concerned about where our managers have failed and where others have let us down. A little more introspection can be a good thing.
Absolutely. And we are also preparing for the LBM strategy event hosted by LBM Journal in Boston in October. We are anchoring day 2, first thing in the morning. We've got an entire workbook that we'll be delivering there, which is going to be in tandem with our online course. So we're thrilled to do that. And we've gone a long way. And our thought was, let's take a minute to highlight a few of these elements that form part 1, which is essentially a top 10 list of things not to do. And Carl, this really a germ of an idea came from you, and you presented it with me. And I, for a long time, had wanted to do a book on what not to do. Tell us where this came from and why you think it's important.
So I've wanted to talk about what not to do for a long, long time. My managers in my life gave me the lessons of what not to be. I knew as a new manager, I was 22 years old, in charge of a swing shift crew at Kinko's Copies. And right out of the gate, I had managers doing these horrific things to me and around me. And I thought, gosh, I need to not do that. If I can be a manager of people who doesn't ever do that, I will be a better manager. And I just sort of built that list over time. And it was a decade or more before I ever thought what I wanted to do. I was defined almost exclusively by what I didn't do. But a decade in with a list of things not to do, people were like, oh, you're a really good manager. And I realized the irony of being better than average by only avoiding the bad things.
Yeah, Carl, I love that. And one of the things that I have learned in my own career, not only in just leadership and management, but I would say in all facets as you try to run an intelligent business and we help other people run theirs, is that it's easier to avoid stupid things like we will refer to these banana peels on the sidewalk. It's easier to avoid those than doing something brilliant.
Right. Brilliance is hard. Brilliance is rare. We love it when we see it. But the vast majority of us could up our game by just avoiding the dumb mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erik, I thought it was interesting in your career, you get to tune in frequently to see your former manager on TV as owner of the Dallas Mavericks on Shark Tank. What sort of insights or what did you learn from working with Mark Cuban way back in the early days?
Well, yeah, Mark, what you see on TV is exactly how Mark Cuban is. He is straight to the point. He will tell you exactly how he feels, what he thinks. But the thing about Mark Cuban, when I worked for him, he was as fair of a person as you can be. If you did a bad job, he's going to tell you you did a bad job, and here's why. If you did a great job, he's going to tell you, hey, great job on that. He and I had a good relationship because we were both born and raised in Pittsburgh, so we had the Penguins, Steelers, Pirates connection. So thankfully, I never got on his bad side,
Right.
Because if he was starting to look at me a little angrily, I would just steer the conversation to the Penguins or the Pirates. And when I was working for him during that time, he was actually in the process of trying to buy the Penguins. But Mark Cuban was a great leader when I worked for him. And you see him on TV. That's exactly how he was in the office. He was always upbeat, and he was always fair with you.
Got it. Well, let me ask you this, Erik, and then Carl, we'll kick it over to you. The first what not to do that we're going to discuss here today is kind of a 2-for-1. And there have been some people, as we've been sharing the idea, Carl, that have pushed back on this. But it's really about taking undue credit. And the flip side of this coin is shifting blame when good things happen. And obviously, a lot of really good things happen for Mark Cuban and you and your company. Did he ever take unnecessary credit? Or how would you view that as you think back in your time working with him?
No, I don't think he ever took any undue credit or unnecessary credit. He spread the credit around. If the broadcast team was doing a great job, he would make sure that the broadcast team was well aware of what he thought of them and how great of a job that they did. Now, and again, if you did a bad job, he's going to let you know. But we had a bunch of young people back then who were just trying to figure out the internet. This was late 90s, 97, 98, and we were all trying to figure it out. So everybody was kind of in their own little sphere, trying to figure out the internet and for their clients and what we can do and how we can push this forward. And so he urged that from everybody, and it wasn't like he was sitting on TV where he would often appear on CNBC or the financial shows and
Right.
kind of tout the company. He wasn't saying that he was doing everything. He was certainly giving credit to our entire staff.
Got it. So, Carl, let's kick this over to you here. Why would someone say, all right, you have a top 10 list. Why can't it be 9 chapters, as we have certainly discussed ad nauseum? Why does it need to be 10 instead of 9 when taking undue credit and shifting blame are, which we agree, are two sides of the same coin?
They're definitely related. We think of them, it's about credit, right? Who owns the thing? And in the one hand, it's handing it to somebody else and saying that person's messed up. They have the credit. Or versus, I did right, I'm taking the credit. Feels like the same thing. It's that ownership. But the reality, I think, certainly my experience, is that different people do different things. Some people, I've had managers who did not ever cast blame, but who took all the credit. And I have worked with people who did the opposite, right? And the mechanics, I think, are a little different. When things go wrong, blame is the game. Do I own it? Do I take the good behavior and own the responsibility that it happened on my watch? Or do I shift it to somebody else? So that's a when things go wrong concept. When things go right concept, you get a different game. And that's the good behavior, of course, is sharing who on the team did that thing versus saying, it was my team, I did that.
Yeah. Well, I think if you bring up a good point in that the absence of something negative doesn't make it a positive. And when I realize when I say that sentence, some people are like, what? Are you drinking? And we may or may not be. But the idea is just because you aren't taking that credit yourself, you're not taking the undue credit, just because you're not doing that doesn't mean you are sharing it with your team, right?
That's right.
Does not mean you're not distributing it. So it's just say, this is a bad thing. Oh, I don't do that. Right. But are you doing the good thing? And those are two different things. And it's subtle, but it's a nuance that I think really separates the poor managers from the average or better than average managers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been on the other side where I've had managers take credit or other people take credit for my work, and they just took something that I did and did not give me the credit for it, even though it was hard work by me and I made everything happen. They took the credit as more of a team or a group or this is what we did, with no mention of the work that I did. And a lot of times when you're in those situations, you kind of figure out what type of manager you're working for, what type of leader he is. And then when things do go bad, when that finger gets pointed at you, on a time like that, after it wasn't pointed at you at a time you did very well, you kind of figure everything out and know exactly where you stand.
The more toxic of those two behaviors is the blame, I think. Of
course.
Right? That's the one that chews up a team, makes people angry faster. The taking credit is more insidious. It's slower. It takes longer to be frustrated about, but ultimately has the same kind of impact, I think. One of the things that we talk about in our book is human nature. We all have these tendencies. It's always there, and it manifests in different ways over time. And these two things are, like we've said, are different, and they need to be dealt with separately.
Yeah, and I think I always go back to the quote from William Gibson, which is, appreciation is one of the deepest human needs. And I think it's hard for people who, as humans, we crave that, but you reach a certain level where you now have to deflect that. You need to actively and ideally proactively plan for the success and distribute that and take none of it yourself, even though, right, there theoretically would be more value for taking that credit your own. So you really have to be in that moment. And again, I think it's really hard to consistently beat human nature. Right?
Well, and one of the things I think that's true of human nature is we like simple answers. Mm-hmm. We like the idea of blame. We like the idea of credit. The truth is it's complex, right? If something really goes right, lots of people were involved in that, mm-hmm. right? And so we can share that. One of the things, to your point of the absence of the negative and the presence of the positive, as humans, we like simple things. We like binary. We like on, off. Right. Our brains go that way. And I think what I have come to believe is that the reality is tertiary. It's three things. It's off, it's neither on nor off in the middle, or it's on. And just because you're not doing the negative thing, as you say, doesn't mean that the positive thing is happening. There's three states.
So Carl, do you have any best practices to measure this? Ideas or situations or people that you've known, or maybe tactics you employ to kind of take this mindset of what gets measured gets done? How can we be more cognizant about sharing and distributing that credit?
Yeah, I think this one's relatively simple. We start in our book with the most toxic, in some ways easiest to understand things, and we get progressively more complicated. This is still relatively easy. In terms of giving credit, think about your team. Have you given public credit to everyone on your team lately? Make a chart, make a list. I have 5 people that are my direct reports. What have they done well, and why haven't I talked about it? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes you may have 4 of those people that you have, but the one person kind of gets under your skin, or the one person doesn't do it all the time right. They're not as showy. They're not as flashy. And it turns out that maybe I haven't given that one person a whole lot of credit. You may have 5 children where 4 of them you talk about all the time, and one of them just is in the middle somewhere. Mm-hmm. Same concept, right? Just become cognizant of, have I done it for all my people lately? And if you manage managers, can you give credit to some of your direct reports people? That's even better.
Yeah, and needless to say, this is also something that you can quantitatively measure. Once a month, once a quarter, once a year. Are you getting adequate appreciation or feedback based on your own work? And let people measure that. And obviously the harder thing there is creating a culture of candor where people can raise their hand and say, actually, no, I'd like to get recognized more. And the other thing, this could take us down a rabbit hole, but I think it's also important to ask permission on when and how people like to be appreciated for their work. And some people disdain the idea of public recognition and understanding, well, that's not me. I want the trophy, put me on a pedestal. Like, dude, shine the light on me, baby, right? Shocking for you guys to look at me here. But some people, it makes their skin crawl. It stresses them out. They can't sleep the night before. Ask them how they like to be appreciated when they do great work.
Right. They may be the kind of person that all you need to say to them is, I was talking to our CEO last week and I told him, wow, what an amazing job you've done. And that sends them over to the moon.
Right.
And that may be all that it takes. Nothing public about it. I would encourage everyone also to make sure that you have to find something sincere. It has to be genuine. If it's on a calendar, it can feel like it's on a calendar, and that destroys the credibility. So you've got to find the sincere thing and find a way to do it more often than you criticize. 3 to 1 minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So would you feel as though annual reviews are kind of one of these things that are on the calendar? You might not hear anything from your supervisor or manager about anything great you're doing. However, then you get your annual review. It feels like, okay, now I either have to say something nice or something negative. So now's the time. And it does, I guess, feel like it is on the calendar and they have to do something there.
Yeah, that's a great question. Reviews, evaluations are a 3-hour podcast that we could do another time.
Yes.
So much there. But to your point, your question, my take is there can't be a surprise on an eval. The negative things on the eval have to have been talked about before. The positive things on the eval should have been talked about before. Why? If you're going to say something positive on an eval, why in the world are you missing the chance to double up on saying the same thing nice twice, right? So there can't be surprises either way. The evaluation is a document of history. You might find it effective to keep a list ongoing. What are the good things? What are the great things that happened in January if you're doing a review in December? Because I sure can't remember what happened 6 weeks ago in a detailed way of what somebody did. There's too much detail, but a list. Then you circle back and you're like, boy, in January, you did this thing that was awesome. And they're like, he remembers that.
Yeah. Well,
that's excellent.
Yeah. I think that's such a powerful phrase, is that as a manager, as a leader, if you are giving a review with someone, a formal review, and there is a surprise on their behalf, that is on you. That's a sign that you have not done a good enough job. And I know lots of managers will be saying, well, this is true, but you don't understand. When Carl works for me, I was giving him this feedback all the time. And yet we have the review and he forgets all that feedback. Again, we can go down a rabbit hole here. Perception is reality. But when you're constantly having these discussions about keep up the great work, or, hey, we got to do better. And then you have a review and you say, hey man, nothing new here. This is what we've been talking about for months, right? So I love that. I'm watching the time here. I want to move on to number 2. Reads easy, does hard, as do kind of all of these here. Micromanage, right? We know the micromanagers. We know what it feels like to have someone micromanage your work. This is coming from someone who gave a superintendent who's 22 years old spelling tests for 6 months because I wanted his punch lists to be pristine and unbelievably elegant. I feel bad.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked to hear that about you, Bradley.
Sorry, JJ. I've learned so much since then. Why is this idea that universally we know how terrible it is to work for a micromanager, and yet people then get in this position and all of a sudden we're like, oh, I guess I am micromanaging. Carl, why is this so hard for people to act upon in an intelligent way?
That's a great question. It's so different. The difference is, I don't want you to micromanage me, but I know exactly what I need, exactly what it should look like, and I don't think my employee does. And so I have to with him, but don't do it to me. I mean, I think it's hypocrisy, right? It's just judging others by different standards, and we all have that tendency.
Erik, you might be looking at me now being quite hypocritical, and you can share your thoughts on that here in a second. This is a place full of candor, but I think most managers would say, well, you don't understand. I'm not micromanaging. I'm coaching to improve his performance or her performance, right?
Bradley, I know micromanaging, and you, sir, are no micromanager.
That's the most beautiful thing you've ever told me.
I've seen it both ways. Early in my career, they just let me go do my work. The last company I worked for, it was micromanaging every day. What are you doing here? Why are you doing it this way? Please explain, these long emails to me.
Okay.
So I know what that micromanaging looks like. However, there is some level of a supervisor not micromanaging, but trying to be helpful. And where, Carl, maybe you can answer this, where does that line get drawn?
Yeah, I think it's the mechanics, right? The telling somebody how specifically to do a task is different than saying, these are the outcomes that we want from the task. Mm-hmm. A good manager ensures that their people understand what are the outcomes we're looking for. We don't care quite how you do it when you get there. My very first job, Subway sandwiches, I had a manager who wanted me to clean a bathroom in a specific way. He told me how I had to hold the toilet brush to clean the toilet, that the mechanics, the scrubbing down, the pulling up, this mattered. That's ludicrous. I mean, we laughed about it afterwards. I went to a coworker and I was like, he told me how to hold a toilet brush. And she was like, you got the toilet lecture. Yeah. Everybody gets the toilet lecture.
It's charming.
I learned in that moment, if you have an employee who will willingly clean the bathroom, I'm going to let them clean the bathroom. And if they take 3 seconds longer than you would take, that's a win because you're not cleaning the bathroom. So the mechanics of the task, I think, is an important distinction.
Well, I think both you guys touched on something important is, number one, have we clearly articulated the outcomes we're looking for? And I've said within a range of behaviors and time and financial impact to the business, I don't care how you get there. If you got a better way to do it, great. If you're doing something worse that takes longer and costs more money, I'm gonna jump in. Eric, you also brought up email, right? And the way that you can micromanage, I think if you are leveraging email to ask questions about how'd you do this and answer me this. What were you thinking here? Not all the time, and especially with remote situations with work, but I think email can be an incredibly passive-aggressive way to micromanage in a way that seems efficient.
Yes, and I would avoid all caps.
That's weird. Why?
Just from past history. But yes, and thoughts aren't conveyed through email very well. Like somebody can be trying to help you out, but it's going to come across as micromanaging.
Yeah.
Why did you do it this way? That could be taken one of two ways. It could be, why the hell did you do it this way? Or why did you do it this way? That's a great way to do it. Maybe that's the best way to do it. I'm not a big fan of sending lengthy emails, checking in with people who work with you or anything like that. Get to the point, and if you have a question, ask it in a way that it can't be construed as negative and micromanaging.
Yeah. And something super tactical is if you ever find yourself asking the question, what were you thinking? And as a manager, that can be really helpful to try to understand that. Normally, 99 times out of 100, that happens when bad things happen. And if you can slide that sentence in when something amazing happens, something surprising, a positive outcome, and you come and say, Eric, that's amazing. Great job. Walk me through what you were thinking. What that is going to at least, even this is purely strategic, is going to give you cover when you ask that same question when, the garbage hits the fan.
Right. And I receive these types of emails from you all the time. Please, you're brilliant. Tell me how you do it.
Genius.
Wait, how do I get one of those emails?
Walk me backwards.
Why don't I ever get your brilliant email? Walk me through that.
Carl, chapter 3's late.
Yeah.
Hustle up. What were you thinking?
But yeah, it's your delivery of the email. Can it be construed as negative? It doesn't take much to reread your email and boy, how are they going to take this email and change it up a little bit?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you send an email to 30 people, same email, 4 of them will read it as though you wrote it mad.
Right.
And 4 of them will take it exactly the way you meant it. And the other 22 will read it in some other wild way you did not intend.
Right.
Email's tough.
Yeah.
Email's tough. And I think if nothing else, what we've gotten really good at is Zoom, is FaceTime, is finding ways to look one another in the eye and communicate when we are in very different places. And I think as managers, when we have these uncomfortable conversations now, I think there is a way to overdo this. And I've been accused as such, as like awkward conversations, conflict avoidance. What are you talking about? I love it. Conflict, I'm going to run to it. And so I think there's a way that you can overdo the bad part, but if you're going to have something where, yeah, this person's not going to feel good about it, try to find a way to do it face-to-face, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Man up, right? And have that uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, and I think just to take it back to the top of the concept of micromanagement, to your point, the more you can manage in person, the less it will feel like micromanaging, even if the intent is the same. We used to teach in customer service training, communication was 7% words, 38% tone, 55% body language. And when we would teach that class, we would always have somebody in the room say, that's ridiculous. The words, no way that's 7%. Right. I would offer you 2 examples. When was the last time you got insanely mad in traffic when you could not hear their words and you could not get the tone? All you had was body language, right, and you were ready to commit violence of some sort, right? Body language is insanely powerful. The second is, if you've ever traveled overseas, how well have you communicated with somebody that doesn't speak your language? Yeah. You have body language, you have tone. That's all you need. You can get a whole lot done. So Zoom is a huge step forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Cool. Let's jump to number 3, the third one we're going to talk about here today. This one, you continued to elevate it to the point that I was finally like, oh, I see what he's saying. It took me several tries, but number 3 is don't flash your money. For a new manager, and I would say obviously for every manager, Carl, what does it mean when you say don't flash your money?
Yeah, so our first 10, as we've talked about, are things not to do.
Right.
And the immediate audience for all 10 is, as you say, brand new managers. Not that we don't all have lessons to learn and ability to get better and all of these things, but a mistake that brand new managers make, and I made it gloriously. I got promoted. I became an assistant manager. I got a giant raise. And all of a sudden I started taken to lunch. And now I'm thinking, wow, now I make more money and I'm not buying lunch.
Right.
I have been working with the same crew for about a year. And I went back to my good friends that I worked with, that I've worked with for a year, that were my friends. And I said, get a load of this. How great is my life? I make more money now and I don't buy my lunch anymore.
Right.
And I was shunned appropriately. They were mad. What a jerk, braggart. And my effectiveness decreased dramatically. And I learned a little too slow, but eventually I got there, that I needed to not flash my money. I needed to not make it clear that my situation was financially better than their situation.
Yeah, I distinctly remember this. I got my first promotion as 25-year-old project manager at Pulte Homes. Within salespeople and other people in operations and finance that I looked up to, Allen Edmonds shoes was a big thing. Are you guys familiar with Allen Edmonds? These are, quote unquote, the shoes that the presidents wear. It's a pair of loafers. They start at like $300 and go up from there.
Strangely, I don't own a pair of those.
Oddly, right? So as soon as I got promoted, that was like part of it. And I remember talking to a sales guy. I won't mention his name. Still a good guy. And he was like, dude, you got to look the part, and it starts with the shoes. So I take heed to that. I get promoted. That weekend, I go downtown Chicago, go to Allen Edmonds. $350 later, I have these shoes. I show up on Monday. Someone's like, whoa, someone got new shoes. They're like, what are you going to do when you walk the job site? I was like, interesting. I hadn't considered that. And then the only worst feeling is probably a poor choice of shoes, although I wanted to represent who I was and where that I have arrived, is then you have to wear said shoes out and they get full of mud. And then all the people that theoretically should be looking up to you for management and leadership are now making fun of the fact that you're probably going to be highly concerned about going back and cleaning said shoes. I just remembered, like, what am I doing? How have I fallen into this trap of idiocy? And, 16 years later, Carl's like, yeah, right here. Don't flash your money.
So are you saying I can't buy a nice car?
No, Carl, of course you can, but should you be thoughtful about that? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, right. We do get to live the life that we have worked hard for and earned. differences between that and rubbing that in the face of people that we work with.
Right.
Respect is key. And part of your effectiveness, right? The goal that we're shooting for in all of these ideas is how do we become more effective as managers? And these are all behaviors that, to the degree we can become more aware, more thoughtful, we can increase our effectiveness, which is the goal.
Yeah, so to take this home for us, I think whether you're thinking about credit and taking undue credit or shifting blame or micromanaging or not flashing your money, each one of these comes down to, I think at the core is two things. Are you aware of it? And are you behaving with intention, right? And I think, Carl, you continue to just emphasize, why are we doing this? Why are we putting together this, part one is a top 10 list of things not to do? And you look at these things, well, can I wear a Rolex? Sure. Can I show up in down here in Texas, you can get an $80,000 pickup truck. Can you do that? Can you flash your money? Sure. And do some managers do that? And are they effective? Yes. But why are we talking about these things?
Because we want to be better managers. We want to find all the wrinkles that we can possibly iron out of our performance to make us more effective. Yeah. We're only as good as the teams that we work with, and anything that creates frustration, aggravation, anger with the people that work for us and with us destroys our effectiveness, and that's not good for anybody.
I think that's a great spot to end here. I want to thank our friends at Boise Cascade Engineered Wood Products. Also, I want to mention here, Erik, you've been doing some yeoman's work. So you need, as we're talking about being a good manager, you've been doing a great job on social media, getting us more systematic, improving our process, getting our podcast out in front. So I want to say thank you. Also, I'm sure you want to remind our listeners that these reviews on Apple Podcasts specifically mean more to us than you know. So if you got value from this episode or any other ones, that's a small step you can take to help us. Carl, have you ever given us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts?
I have not.
That's the answer. I was looking at your face. I was like, I wonder if he's going to lie right to my face. He
never,
did not.
Never to your face, Brad.
All right.
Never to your face.
The Behind Your Back podcast, after all. Preaching to the choir. All right. Put that on your list of things to do there, my friend. And again, if you got value from this, that would mean more to us than you know. Feel free to email me directly at bradley@behindyourbacksales.com. Bradley@behindyourbacksales.com. If you've gotten value from this, if you have suggestions to improve it, guests that we should have on the show, topics we should talk about, I want to hear from you. Don't hesitate to contact me directly. So we're going to close out like we always do on the fly, gentlemen. Do you think we can do this? Carl, can you do the first half of our leadership mantra? Erik, you bring it home. There is a 3-foot sign in the office here. In case you have not seen this before, Carl, take it home.
I believe I remember this. My wife loves this sentence a great deal. You are owed nothing.
Deliver value first.
Make it a great week. Thanks for listening.